Joining me now, Democratic strategist Michael Starr Hopkins. Michael, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, Michael, this is the hot topic of the day. You can't look anywhere online and social media. I mean, even people are talking about it. Friends are talking about it. Coworkers are talking about it. This is certainly the hot topic.
Absolutely.
I want to play the devil's advocate here, and this is the question of the day. Is it discriminatory, Michael, for the military to exclude people that, say, have peanut allergies or people with flat feet, people that have pre-existing conditions, I suppose, that require special care?
I think if you just carte blanche tell them they can't serve in the military, then yeah, it could be. If they can and are able to serve, then they should be allowed to. If you're talking about people with peanut allergies, and let me back up and say, I would never compare being transgender to having a medical allergy. But just to follow the logic, if you have a peanut allergy, then that may mean you need to work somewhere where there's not peanuts, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to serve in the military. And when we're looking at transgender individuals who are fit to serve should be able to serve just like anyone else. We shouldn't treat them differently or exclude them from serving.
Well, listen, that's kind of where I'm coming from here. And like I said, I want to play the devil's advocate on here because I don't think it's a fundamental right for people to serve in the military. The military actually is very discriminatory about their standards about who can serve. There's a booklet this thick, and I read it this morning just to make sure that I was correct in all this, about all the medical conditions that do disqualify you from service, not just because of standards that you have to perform, but also because the military doesn't have the capacity to care for people with certain medical conditions, or it's too expensive for it to be worth that one individual serving. So the idea that someone's disqualified for a medical condition doesn't mean that it's about their, gender identity, their expression, how they want to categorize their sexuality or their orientation. I don't see how this is any different.
But I would disagree with you with the notion that it's a medical condition. Being transgender is, I think, no different than any other way of life. I think that we have individuals who believe that they were born one way, but should have been born another way. I think we have a member of the Team 6 SEAL team who was a male and now identifies as a female. And I think that the idea that this is what Donald Trump is focusing on is nothing other than politics.
Right. I don't think that's medically accurate, though. I'm not a doctor here. But I believe in order to undergo transition surgery, you have to be medically diagnosed by a doctor. You have to get that passed. You certainly have to get that in the military. I mean, we saw that training manual that the Army passed out. It was just last week we covered it, where they warned female soldiers that they could see men, or I guess transgender men who still have male genitalia in their showers. And they said these people have been medically diagnosed as women, even though they have male genitalia still. So I don't think that's quite accurate to say that it's not a medical condition. It is, in a sense. You have to be diagnosed with that.
I do not believe that being transgender is a medical condition. But what I will say here is that Donald Trump identified this as an economic issue. When you look at the economics of it, the military spends about $2.5 million a year on transgender reassignment surgeries. It spends about $85 million a year on Viagra. So what this really is about is not about transgender individuals serving in the military. This is about distracting away from the healthcare bill and from Russia and from things that the president doesn't really want to talk about.
Listen, I don't disagree with you that the military wastes a lot of money, and I think that's a perfect example of it. I mean, I don't want to betray anybody's privacy here, but there's certainly an aspect. You're allowed to get elective surgery, I should say, when you're in the military, and people abuse that. They get cosmetic surgery on the military's dime, which really means on the taxpayer's dime. That is an abuse of funds, if you will. But let me put this a different way. Endometriosis, which is, of course, a female issue, that disqualifies you from military service unless you get a waiver for that. If that individual, that woman, is disqualified for endometriosis, does that mean that that's a sexist? That's discriminatory because she's a woman? Or does that mean that, that condition requires extra medical care and therefore she's not qualified to serve?
No, that wouldn't be discrimination, because many of the women who aren't allowed to serve because of that condition aren't allowed to serve because of the issues of cysts, and that if a cyst were to rupture and they were on the battleground in a submarine, then there wouldn't be access to health care in the same way.
But that's exactly the same.
Those are very different issues.
No, that's exactly the same, because the medical community within the military doesn't always have the training. They don't always have the capacity to care for the medical needs of transgender individuals. So I don't see at all how that's different.
Because if an individual is serving in the military, their health is not threatened by gender reassignment surgery. Whether they're male or female, they can still go on the battlefield. Now, if they'd like to elect to have gender reassignment surgery, then that may be something that may sideline them for a period of time during the recuperation
That's what
period.
I mean, though.
But the act alone of
That's what I mean, though. I mean, that's the same sort of thing.
That.
That's not only is it incredibly expensive, it does impact their ability to be able to perform their job. And think about, if you're talking about the Middle Eastern wars, think about a transgender individual that requires a certain amount of hormones or that has other medical issues that come with gender reassignment surgery. There's a lot of medical costs that come into this. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with, you know, a boot camp scenario. A boot camp scenario, but they disqualify. They disqualify recruits constantly for, frankly, trivial medical conditions because they don't want to bear the cost of that down the line if these individuals stay in the military for a full career.
But by that logic, if an individual were to need their tonsils taken out, then they would be banned from ever serving in the military. And I think that's a dangerous line to draw.
Well, actually,
here we're just saying
if you have a history of having tonsil problems, you are disqualified for military service. So that actually is an example that falls right in that line. But a pre-existing condition is what I'm talking about.
A pre-existing condition that threatens the safety of those around you could be a disqualifying reason for the military. Being transgender is not a pre-existing condition. It's not something that threatens the life around you. And I know I've spoken to my friends that are in the military, and they're more concerned with making sure that the people around them have their back and that they're safe.
Right.
And those individuals, like the member of SEAL Team 6, have served bravely. And I think we should continue to bring the country together and make sure that, you know, we're talking about the best of us, not focusing on things that are political issues that Donald Trump admitted he's using as a wedge issue in areas like Ohio and areas like Texas where the president's potentially vulnerable.
Listen, I don't want to by any means insinuate that I'm being disrespectful to the transgender individuals who've served in our nation. Everyone who has served, you know, is responsible for the fact that we are still free, and I honor that and I'm grateful for that. But I do understand the idea that medical conditions, even when they don't threaten the safety of those around you, a peanut allergy doesn't threaten the safety of anyone but yourself. But there are issues, medical issues that disqualify, and I think the left is, you know, honestly, they're being a little fake about their outrage here. There was even a tweet, and I want to show this on the screen. This is from Steve Silberman. He's liberal, and he's liberal and he's gay, and he's an author. He said, "Bigot Trump is much greater threat to LGBT people worldwide than ISIS." I mean, Michael, this is not a response that is equal to what President Trump did here. The left is trying to be perpetually outraged. They're trying to paint Trump as a bigot. That's not the case. This is just a matter of practicality.
Well, I think you could look at your mentions or look at my mentions and see people on both sides saying a lot of crazy stuff. So I won't. That individual doesn't speak for Democrats, and you know, some of the crazies out there don't speak for Republicans. I think here we should look at specifically what was the intent behind what Donald Trump wanted to do. If you seriously think that Donald Trump wanted to address the safety and effectivity of our military, then that's one thing. But I don't really believe that most Americans think that. They think that this is a wedge issue that he wants to use heading into 2018 to bring more Republicans out and to make Democrats vulnerable.
Right, and I think that's why the American people don't vote on everything that our military does, because our generals and military experts and the commander-in-chief, they're the ones who have to determine that, not mob rule within America.